So if we look at the individual parts of the large intestine, then here we've seen these diagrams before. We're looking at the caecum and the appendix. And here again we can see we've got the ileum. We can see the appendix here radiating away from the caecum. And this is a posterior view, as if you're looking at the caecum and appendix through my posterior abdominal wall. So we can see the ileum is radiating away to the left in this direction. And what we can see is radiating from the appendix are these three bands of longitudinal muscle. There we have the mesocollectini, which attaches to the mesocolon, or the mesocolon attaches to this tenacoli. We also have the omental tenacoli, where the greater omentum is coming from this one. And then we have the free tenacoli, which I mentioned previously, doesn't have anything attached to it. So we have these three bands of longitudinal muscle. And if this was a piece of small intestine, then obviously we'd have that complete layer. Here we can see we've got the caecum and the appendix again, but this time the caecum and the initial portion of the ascending colon has been opened up. So we can now see the opening of the ileum into the large intestine. We can see the caecum here. We've got a nice little opening for the appendix, which is this slender, blind-ended pouch. And then we've got this caecum, which is like this little bag, this little sac. And then we've got the ascending colon, which would pass up in this direction. The appendix is anchored via a mesoappendix. It's quite a small piece of mesentery, the mesoappendix. And the position of the appendix, as we can see in this diagram here, is incredibly variable. So we can see that even though we open up the right inguinal region, and we should be able to locate the appendix, it may actually need some rooting around to find it, because the tail of the appendix, the kind of tip, can project into numerous different directions. Here we see it lying posterior to the ileum. We see it lying anterior to the ileum here. Here we can see it poking kind of straight down as a continuation of the ascending colon. And here we can see it actually tucked underneath the caecum. So although it's there, it may need some rooting out. So if we just stick with the appendix for a little bit longer, then the function of the appendix is not really that well understood in the human. In the lower animals, it's important in being able to digest grass and various other aspects of digestion. But in the human, it's really a lymphoid tissue. It helps to produce white blood cells and part of the lymphatic system. Now, because it's a narrow, blind-ended pouch, it can actually become blocked. And if it becomes blocked by feces, then it can actually can swell and become inflamed. And that creates appendicitis if it was to become inflamed and it potentially become infected. Now, we mentioned this when we looked at the surface anatomy, but now we understand the anatomy of the appendix a bit more. We may be able to appreciate the position of the appendix in this right inguinal region. And again, we can locate the umbilicus, we can locate the anterior superior iliac spine, and then a line drawn between these 2 points, and then a line a third of the way from the anterior superior iliac spine to the umbilicus, so about here, is going to be what's known as McBurney's point. And that is the position of the appendix. So it can be very painful appendicitis, and the pain initially being felt in the midline, where you just have this dull ache. But with time, the pain can progress to this lower right quadrant in association with McBurney's point.